alive, Mr. Scheinert. So, oops, well, hold on. It's preparing to live stream it. So you got about 30 seconds here before you're officially live and the cameras start rolling.
You let me know when we can start.
We're going to go live, and we are now live, Mr. Scheinert. So you may begin, Mr. Scheinert.
Very well. I'd like to call to order the May 26th regular board meeting of the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit. The next item is Pledge of Allegiance, but before we say the pledge, I'd just like to note that I'd like to honor the veterans who, Veterans Day, not Veterans Day, but Memorial Day, we honor the loss of veterans that have occurred over the years. And it's my honor to be able to recognize these individuals. And with that, I'd like to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and anybody who would like to salute is welcome to do so. I pledge allegiance
To
the
the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the republic
for
for which it stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you. Next item, roll call.
Okay, Mr. Scheinert,
Present.
Mr. Sarnes,
Present.
Ms. Beveridge, Mrs. Bretz, Ms. Callaway Rodriguez, Mrs. Sioka, Mr. Feldbush,
Here.
Mr. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Kendris, Mr. Leonard, Mrs. Maines, Mrs. Mock, Mrs. Schmidt, Mr. Schrock, Mrs. Smith,
Here.
Ms. Thomas, Ms. Urban.
Here.
I'm counting only 7 present and 2 7 present, Dr. Conway. Is that what you have?
No, so Mrs. Maines, are you on the call and can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, so
Okay.
she's present. Mrs. Bretz, are you on the call and can you hear us clearly? Mrs. Bretz, can you hear us? And are you on the call? All right, so Christy, I count Mrs. Maines 1, Scheinert 2, Urban 3, Felbush 4, Sioka 5, Smith 6, Sarnes 7, Schmidt 8, Jones 9. The only one we have not heard from is Mrs. Bretz.
So 9 present, 8 absent.
At this point in time, yes. If Mrs. Bretz, I've unmuted her. Try
Dr.
again.
Conway, Mrs. Bretz.
She's in the chat.
She
Her
said
mic is not working.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know that.
Okay.
So Christy, what's the final total?
10 present, 7 absent.
Okay.
We only need 9, is that correct?
That is
That is
correct.
correct.
Okay.
Very well. We have a quorum. All right, with that, the next item is citizen comments on agenda items, and we received no citizen comments to date, and therefore there are no comments to go over. Next item is approval of the minutes for the April 28th, 2020 meeting. I'd like to have a motion to approve these minutes.
So moved, Sarnes.
And Feldman.
Second Urban.
Very well. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the minutes? If not, we'll vote on these minutes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I believe it carries. Minutes are approved. Financial reports. There are 3 reports here. Items FR 1920 TAC 32 through FR 1920 TAC 34. I need a motion to approve the financial reports.
So moved, Maines.
Second, Sioka.
Okay, is there any discussion of the financial reports? Apparently there isn't any, so therefore I'd like to have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Sarnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bretz,
Yes.
Mrs. Sioka,
Yes.
Mr. Feldbush,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Maines,
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner,
Yes?
10 yes, motion carried.
Very well. Moving on to the next item is board committee reports. I'll start with the executive committee. It's been kind of an unusual situation. Those on the board have heard a number of the issues in the previous meetings and discussions, not just tonight, but on previous dates, where we've been going over a number of issues related to how we deal with COVID-19. And again, it's impacted our folks not only for conduct of the WIU, but also interactions with supporting school districts. And I want to thank everybody for all of your hard work and dedication. It's clearly coming to pass throughout our county that these efforts of yours have been most noteworthy and very important. So I wanted to pass along my thank you to everyone involved. All right, next I'd like to move on to the other committees. Ms. Maines, do you have anything to say for curriculum services? Is Susan there?
Help school districts. Am I muted? Okay.
Okay.
We had a very interesting curriculum committee meeting talking about the things that have been going on at the IU to help the districts and set up the virtual training with the teachers and things like that. It was very well received and very well done, and I appreciate the knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Financial services, Bill Feldbush.
Lynn conducted a meeting with a number of items. The first one was she put out some RFPs for banks. We currently have PNC and we're getting very little customer service. So Lynn went out for 5 banks, got 2 responses, and the First National Bank was the winner of between First National and S&T. And first, that will be an item on the agenda tonight, FS 1920-012. First National stood out in a number of things, including interest and a lot of other aspects on the spreadsheet. Lynn went out for transportation proposals for the upcoming year. Had three responses. DMJ is our current one. First Student is one of them. AJ Myers. Our goal was to have a single carrier, but some of the, like DMJ, only covers its current routes, and we use a First Student for the balance and so forth. To make a long story short, we have not awarded anything yet. We're still waiting some responses. Should be on hopefully the June agenda. There was a number of budgets discussed. 8 of them are on the agenda tonight. And there's three pending for June. Early Intervention, Act 89, I believe was the idea 2 and 3. Lynn briefly discussed the fixed assets in discussion to the Deluzio audit and that technicality, which is being addressed with I guess we call it a Perego asset finder. And that's to deal with the electronic disposals and recycling and so forth there. And the last item, miscellaneous, was regarding the fund balance. We discussed in the past about having a prioritized list of how we're going to put some money aside for different things like bollards and so forth. And we're still looking into how much we're going to commit because of IT costs associated with this pandemic and stuff. And so we'll be addressing it later in June or something. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I don't believe Sharon Mock is here tonight for student.
Mr. Shiner, you are now, there we go. You were muted.
I was muted, but okay, I don't believe that Mrs. Mock is here, so we don't have student services report tonight, nor is Bill Leonard here to discuss technology and infrastructure services.
And those committee meetings were canceled due to attendance.
Okay. And that moves us to the executive director report.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. A brief report this evening. One thing that we wanted to share is that the intermediate unit, in partnership with the 17 school districts and in consultation with the Consortium of Public Education and the United Way, were successful in a request for proposals from the R.K. Mellon Foundation and was invited to apply for a full grant through the foundation of upwards to $250,000. And I cannot thank enough the leadership of Dr. Matt Thomas and his ability to work with many others to pull together an outstanding grant application that we should be hearing in the next few days, whether we've been successful or not. Dr. Thomas, would you like to give an overview of what the grant involves?
Absolutely, Dr. Conway. It's the grant application was based upon the need that we have been seeing across our school districts and county, whereas elementary classrooms and early childhood classrooms. So that covers the IU's early intervention program, as well as of a lot of the elementary schools across the county. The reason that was the target focus was that that's where we've seen the greatest need for internet access. We've seen the greatest need for teachers to learn how to blend instruction and hybridize instruction, as well as we've also seen the greatest need for actual devices for young learners, for their families. And so in a nutshell, the grant proposal will provide a lending library for students aged 3 through intermediate grades, and basically early middle school, or it depends on which district you're in, that you're the upper end of your elementary school. The lending library will consist of hotspots for internet access for 1 year, as well as loaner Chromebook devices. The grant would also provide for specialized teacher training across early childhood and elementary schools all across our county, inclusive of our typical preschools in the EI program, as well as our elementary schools across the 17 school districts. And as Dr. Conway mentioned, the support of the Consortium for Public Ed, as well as the United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania, was a very much welcome value add to the process.
All right. Thanks again, Dr. Thomas. And Denise Needison also played a major role. Tim Hamill played a major role. So it was truly a team effort, and it was a quite extensive grant application. So thanks again for your leadership, Dr. Thomas. And we can't wait to hear whether we've been successful or not. So thanks again. Okay. Second item that I have is just as an FYI, I just wanted to inform the board. We have currently we have one classroom assistant that position that's located at the prison. And many times there's only 1 or 2 students that might be getting services. And we do have a teacher that is assigned to the prison full time. And right across the street, then you have the youth detention center, where you have 2 classrooms of students with only 1 classroom assistant position there. So after discussing and after working with the union, we just wanted to let the board know that we're actually going to be moving that classroom assistant prison position and moving it to the youth detention center, so then that there's better support for the teachers at the youth detention center. But they'll also then lend a helping hand if the teacher at the prison needs any type of classroom assistant services with that. So it's more of an FYI information. There's no board action to be taken, but we just wanted to inform the board in case you might be asked, why was a position moved from the prison to the youth detention center? We just wanted to make sure that you were in the loop of why. Dr. Thomas, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
No, I think that's a very good summary, Doc.
Okay. Well, Mr. President, that concludes the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Dr. Conway. Mr. Leonard's not here to talk about the WIU Foundation. So we'll move on to the next item. There's no correspondence to discuss this evening, and there's no old business. And that gets us on to Human Resource Services. In this area, we have several items up for our approval, specifically HR 1920 TAC 53 through HR 1920 TAC 59. Are there any items here that any board members would like to pull for further discussion? Okay, so I need a motion to approve HR 1920 TAC 53 through HR 1920 TAC 59.
So move, Feldbush.
Second, Urban.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve these items. All right, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to take a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Bretz?
I have yes
Okay,
in
yes.
the chat room.
Okay, so noted. Mrs. Sioka?
Yes.
Mr. Feldbush?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Maines?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Mrs. Schmidt, if you could add your vote in the chat room.
Okay, so noted. Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes,
Yes.
10 yes, motion carried. Motions carried, I should say.
Okay, very well. Move on to curriculum services. There's only one item in this area, item CS 1920 TAC 14. And I need a motion to approve this item.
So moved, Sarnes.
Second, Maines.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we need a roll call for this one also.
Mrs. Sioka,
Yes.
Mr. Feldbush,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Maines,
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
She said yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner, okay, Mr. Shiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bretz. You can put it in the chat.
Yes.
All right, 10 yes, motion carried.
All right, very well. Now we'll move on to financial services. There are 3 items here for us to address. Any board members like to pull any of these items for further discussion? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone wants to pull any items. Therefore, items, I need a motion to approve FR 1920 TAC 10 through FR 1920 TAC 12.
Motion made, Sioka.
Second, Feldbush.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve these 3 items. Is there any further discussion before the vote? Okay, not hearing any further discussion. I'd like to ask for a roll call, please.
Mr. Feldbush,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Maines,
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bretz,
Yes.
Mrs. Sioka.
Yes.
10 yes, motions carried.
Thank you. So now we get to move on to student services. There are a number of items in this section to be voted on. Specifically, there are items SS 1920 TAC 26 to SS 1920 TAC 34. Are any of the board members interested in pulling any of these items? All right, therefore, I need a motion to approve SS 1926 through SS 1920-34.
So moved, Sarnes.
Second, Jones.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve these items. Is there any further discussion? All right, so again, we need a roll call vote for these items.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Maines,
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes,
yes,
Mrs. Bretz,
Yes.
Mrs. Sioka,
Yes.
Mr. Feldbush.
yes,
10 yes. Motion's carried.
Very well, thank you. Okay, we're on to agenda item number 15 for the school board. In this section, there are several items up for approval. Items SB 1920 TAC 71 through SB 1920 TAC 77. Would anyone like to pull any of these items for a separate vote? Okay, since no items are to be pulled, I need a motion to approve items SB 1920 TAC 71 through SB 1920 TAC 77.
So moved, Maines.
second,
Second, Urban.
Okay, is there any further discussion on these items? Hearing none, we need a roll call vote again.
Mrs. Maines,
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt, Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner,
Yes?
Mr. Sarnes,
yes,
Mrs. Bretz,
Yes.
Mrs. Sioka,
Yes.
Mr. Feldbush,
yes,
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
10 yes, motion's carried.
All right, thank you. Item 16 on the agenda, board policy first readings. This evening, there are no first readings. And on to item 17, which is comments by citizens on non-agenda items. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we did not have any public comments on the non-agenda items this evening. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any comments that board directors may have this evening. Are there any comments?
I would just like to make a comment to Dr. Conway to thank him for an outstanding year and for an outstanding evaluation from his local board. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I certainly share your remarks. It's been a good year. Anybody else have any comments that they'd like to share?
I would just also like to add our thanks for getting us through this most unusual end to the school year. And thanks to Jason and the entire staff at the IU.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
So move, Sarnes.
Second, Urban.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting
Aye.